Have you ever looked to go and buy a new SD card and you see prices from anywhere from like $10 up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars? And you're like, what in the world are all these things? What does it matter? Is it going to help me? I'm a professional. Should I get the pro ones? So today we're going to talk about all the different numbers and markings and everything on all these SD cards. So hopefully you can save some money, and if not, at least understand what all those things mean and hopefully figure out what your camera actually needs. Now on most of these cards, you're going to see on the actual label some sort of megabytes per second. This SanDisk Ultra card is an older one that gives me 30 megabytes per second. And so you might think, okay, so I'll look at my camera and think of how many megabytes are in a file, and that's how many photos per second I can use, or how fast of a thing I can use for video. But that's not the case, because manufacturers want to put something that looks impressive. And while 30 megabytes a second isn't impressive, that's only how fast your card is going to be able to be read by your computer, as long as you don't have a slower card reader and bottleneck things that way. So I have cards here that go anywhere from 30 megabytes a second up to 300 megabytes a second. And then even have some of these CFexpress Type A cards that go up to 900 megabytes a second. And again, all of those ratings that you see on the front of a card, for the most part, unless it lists both, are only going to be the read speeds and not the write speeds. Now, most of the cards, again, that are 64 gigabytes or higher are going to say SDXC on them. And that's just the type of card where some of the, readers might not be able to read it if they're too old or whatever. But for the most part, the SDXC are pretty much like the standard across the board at this point. Then on most of these cards, you'll see either a Roman numeral 1 or a Roman numeral 2, and that is pertaining to the UHS speed. So it's either UHS 1, and you can pretty easily tell by just looking at the back of a card whether it is UHS 1 because it has one row, or UHS 2 because it has two rows. The UHS 2 rating allows much more fast data transfer. You can even just look at it and go, oh, there's more stuff to look at, so it's probably going to be able to send information faster. But whether you need a UHS 2 card or not is going to depend on your camera, and you also are going to want to make sure that you have a UHS 2 reader, so when you actually put your photos onto your computer, you're getting that faster read speed. There's also a few other older symbols on here that definitely don't really matter anymore. There is a C with like a number 10 inside of it. All is that saying is it's guaranteed to be able to do a sustained write speed of 10 megabytes a second. It's just kind of like a disregard thing at that point. It's a legacy thing we don't have to worry about. And then you'll also see like a U with either a 1 or a 3 inside of it if you have a newer card of some sorts. So that's another one of those like legacy things that doesn't really matter anymore. But if you have a U with a 1 inside of it, you're getting at least a sustained write speed of 10 megabytes a second. And if you have a U with a 3 in it, you're going to get at least 30 megabytes a second, which again, for the vast majority of things does not really matter. The thing that you are going to be looking for, though, is the V score if you were doing any sort of video stuff. The nice thing about that is the V rating is going to be based off of the guaranteed sustained write speed instead of some read speed where it's often much higher than that. So for most photographers, unless you are just dumping photos like crazy or using a really high megapixel camera, I have been using V30 cards for forever. They're by far just like the most inexpensive cards that are still good quality that you can purchase at this point. And even this video is being recorded on a V30 card. So you can still do 10-bit 4K, 24 frames a second on a V30 card. But it's if you're going to be using sustained bursts at a high megapixel count, that's where you might want to be thinking more into like a V60 card, a V90 card, or those CFexpress Type A or B cards.
So since making this video, I thought I would share specifically what those cards do in each of the cameras I have. So I tested them all on the Leica M10, the Fujifilm X-E4, the GFX 50S, my Sony a7 IV, my Sony a7R V. So kind of just rolling through all these different cameras with a V30 card, a V60 card, a V90 card, and then for the Sonys, the CFexpress Type A, and here are the results.
So the numbers here are how many photos you get before it catches up and, forces you into the buffer. And then the second number is how many seconds it takes to clear that buffer. So obviously, once you get up in there, you can get more photos. So for the a7 IV, you get unlimited photos. The buffer is 1.5 seconds. I found that the buffer basically instantly clears as well. It allows you to keep taking photos on the a7R V But you run into that buffer area where allows you, even on a V30, to just take unlimited photos, but you still have to unload all those, 42. The interesting thing about the GFX 50S is you could just take as many photos as you want and it would just clear them. And the thing I was most surprised by was how much the Leica M10 actually benefited from having faster cards. It moved from 7 seconds to under a second to clear the buffer on those. So pretty impressive there. So every different camera, depending on what you want to do with it, usually has some sort of list of recommended cards for what it does. So on my FX3 here, if I want to do 4K 10 bits at 120 frames a second, I'm going to need a V90 card to allow all of that write speed to be able to just process within the camera and get off onto the card fast enough for me to continue to shoot. But on something like my A7 IV here, while it does have a slot for even like a CFexpress Type A card, every mode that I need to use, I still can get away with using a V60 card, and those are significantly less expensive than a V90 card. So just by knowing what my camera actually needs and how I use it, I was able to save a significant amount of money over buying just all V90 cards, when I could easily get away with using V60 cards in here, even for all the video stuff that I would use this for. Now, these CFexpress Type A cards are like a Sony exclusive kind of thing. The CFexpress Type B cards within cameras like Canon are a lot bigger, but they're also much more affordable and something that I would actually consider using if I was in that system. Especially if you want to dual record on something like the R5, you actually have to use an SD card and a CFexpress Type B card, which is kind of bizarre. The nice thing about the Sonys is you have dual card slots, but each of those card slots is also a dual slot as well. So if you want to do a ton of frames a second, if you just want to lay into the shutter and not worry about the buffer ever, on pretty much every camera that I have, I can just hold down the shutter. I can use every single video format, the least compressed, all that kind of stuff, because the transfer speeds and the write speeds and the read speeds on these are just crazy, crazy, crazy fast. But because they are so new and so small and so fast, these are incredibly expensive.
So when I first recorded this video, I was getting ready to publish it, and then I saw that Angelbird had released a 1 terabyte CFexpress Type A card, and that is pretty insane. So 1 terabyte CFexpress Type A for $500, which is, yes, expensive, but it is so much cheaper than any other option for CFexpress Type A. It's cheaper than most V90 cards in terms of price, like per gigabyte. So Angelbird did send me this card, and I've been using it on weddings. It's just stayed in my camera pretty much the entire time because 1 terabyte is just absolutely absurd. So, so far, absolutely no issues. I'm probably going to pick up another one and maybe a 1 terabyte V60 card or something as well, because having a full terabyte, just be able to record just absurd amounts of stuff is pretty amazing.
So basically, to wrap it up, for most photographers out there, V30 cards are going to be totally fine. If you want to move up to a V60 card, all the better. V90s are what a lot of people are just pushing right now, saying you need to have these. But frankly, unless you have a camera and a method of using that camera that needs a V90 card, as a photographer, I don't really see the need for it. Now, if you're using a camera primarily for video, and most cameras will tell you if you need a faster card in there to use their higher end specs. I don't use the all eye compression anyway, so I definitely don't need to have anything past that. But if you did want to have those crazy fast transfer speeds, again, the CFexpress Type A cards are where you're going to want to be. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully I was able to save you some money if you're going to go out and purchase a bunch of SD cards, which is something that I often do kind of in this off season here, is organize my stuff and kind of get it rolling for the next season. So I'll put links to some of my favorite cards down in the description below, as well as these little SD card labels. There's little stickers that easily come off, but it really helps me during a wedding season or when I have a bunch of shoots to know exactly what's on each card. And then I know when or when I can't actually format them, which can be a huge issue. So let me know if you have any questions about all of this stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.